You ever seen a fire truck swerve onto a guy's lawn like it was trying out for NASCAR? Well, that was my Monday morning, thanks to Karen from the HOA and her brand new no parking sign planted smack dab 2 feet into the street. I mean, come on, who thinks that's a good idea? If you're watching this from somewhere sneaky, maybe hiding from your own HOA drama, drop a comment and let me know where you're hiding, because this story's about to get wild. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story, and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next parts. Now, Karen, she's the kind of woman who thinks community aesthetics are more important than saving lives. And she showed up that day in her bathrobes, sunglasses, and a mimosa like she owned the place. Sirens blaring, brakes squealing, and a fire truck kicking up turf like it was trying to wrestle a bull, all because Karen decided a sign needed to be her latest power move. Don't forget to smash that like button if you've ever dealt with a Karen in your neighborhood. Here is the kicker. Right past my lawn was my emergency water tank, the one I built for backup in case the municipal line ever failed. Karen saw it and freaked out, shrieking about how it violated community aesthetics, as if the tank was some giant, shiny flower pot ruining her patio vibe. She didn't care that the fire truck had just tapped into that tank to save lives at Station 14. Nope, what mattered was that it clashed with her perfectly curated garden. 3 days before this whole circus, I was just out there, under the hot sun, checking the pressure gauges like I did a dozen times before, making sure the seals were tight and the water flow was steady. Then Karen shows up, no greeting, just the classic HOA tough guy pose, hands on hips, lips pursed like she was about to chew glass, and starts demanding what the tank was all about. I told her straight up it was an emergency water reservoir, not a silo for corn, but that didn't faze her. She called it an eyesore, said it was too shiny, and I swear she looked at me like I was speaking Klingon when I mentioned the powder coating that keeps it from degrading. Then she pulls out her phone. And I knew the dance. She was either calling the HOA board or summoning some building inspector who owed her a favor back from her yoga studio days. Karen has this talent for turning the tiniest things into official violations. By the next morning, I had 3 citations taped under my door. Height violations, reflective surface complaints, and my personal favorite, non-conforming agricultural equipment. I'm not farming here. I'm housing pressurized water for firefighting. But facts don't matter when Karen's got her bylaws Bible. What Karen didn't know, and what I never let slip unless absolutely necessary, was that I wasn't just some guy with a big silver drum. I'm working under a silent contract with the county's emergency preparedness team. After a fire 5 years ago knocked out 3 blocks because of hydrant pressure loss, the fire department commissioned a backup tank system. Mine was the prototype, designed, installed, and tested for wildland-urban interface emergencies, so when Karen tried to pull this aesthetic crap, she was messing with federal infrastructure. She called an emergency HOA meeting, but let's be real, it was 5 people tops, and 3 showed up for the wine. She stood on a cooler like a wannabe politician and declared my tank a threat to property values using stats she probably pulled out of thin air. Next thing I know, the building compliance guy shows up looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, clipboard in hand, trying to figure out how to tell me I gotta take my federally backed life-saving water tank down. I laid it out for him straight. This tank isn't some backyard decoration, it's emergency equipment. If Karen keeps pushing, she's gonna find out what happens when you mess with the system. He scribbled some notes and promised to pass it up the chain. Basically, Karen's about to get tangled in a red tape nightmare designed to keep emergency infrastructure running, invisible until disaster hits. And that's when I knew this wasn't just a fight with a no parking sign or a shiny water tank. It was about to turn into a full-blown war. If you're feeling this story so far, don't forget to subscribe for the next part, where things go from petty hacko drama to straight-up neighborhood chaos. Because Karen's about to find out what happens when you pick a fight with the one thing that actually saves lives around here. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. So here's where things started to get downright ridiculous. Karen's little HOA army, bless their confused hearts, decided that the emergency water tank was the perfect canvas for their artistic expression. One morning I woke up to find some teenager had spray-painted the word "drained" across the side of it. Now, I wasn't mad about the vandalism. Hell, I cleaned it off in under an hour. What really ticked me off was that none of these folks had the slightest clue what they were attacking. They thought it was just some shiny eyesore, not the damn thing that could save their homes when the next wildfire rolled in. The irony? Priceless. The tank wasn't just some garden gnome, it was a lifesaver. But Karen's crew saw only what they wanted to see. A threat to their pristine patios. If you've ever had your good intentions misunderstood, hit that like button now because you're going to love how this story unfolds. The heat wave hit like a freight train, pushing our fire system to the edge. The pressure in the municipal lines began dropping fast, and within 20 minutes, the backup protocol kicked in. Station 14's fire trucks roared down the street with sirens screaming, and wouldn't you know it, Karen showed up just in time to cause a scene. Not to help, no, but to scream about unauthorized water bombs on my property, throwing words like domestic threat around like confetti. The firefighters? They had no time for her drama. They ignored her like a mosquito at a picnic and got the pumps hooked up, sending jets of water blasting toward the fire. That's when I realized Karen was way out of her league. She didn't just want the tank gone. She was meddling with something that meant life or death. It was a wake-up call, and if you're all about sticking up for what's right, drop a comment telling me how you'd handle a Karen in your life. Next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing, but not for the reasons Karen hoped. The video of her blocking emergency responders went viral overnight. The local news couldn't get enough of it. The padlocked gate, the angry HOA queen yelling at firefighters while flames licked the hills behind her. Karen wasn't just the neighborhood bully anymore. She'd become the town's public hazard. In response, she threw a press conference in her front yard, trying to spin the whole mess into a conspiracy about military tanks and government overreach. Honestly, it was like watching a soap opera with less drama and more muffins. But the fire chief stepped up right after. No podium, no fluff, just cold, hard facts that shut her down cold. That day, people started seeing the truth. And it wasn't pretty for Karen. If you think small-town drama can't get bigger, wait till you hear what happened next. Subscribe now so you don't miss it. Of course, Karen wasn't about to quit without a fight. The city inspectors showed up to check out her illegal gate, the one she'd padlocked to keep fire trucks out. Turns out none of that gate business had proper permits. Suddenly, all the polite nods she used to get from neighbors turned into side eyes and whispered, "Did you see what she did?" One of her usual cronies even started acting like they didn't know her. Karen's power base was crumbling, and all because she'd picked a fight with a tank. But here's the kicker. Karen didn't just fade away. She went full internet warrior, posting long-winded essays filled with half-truths and weird metaphors, trying to convince folks the tank was some kind of weapon inviting militarization. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. The neighborhood was done playing her game. They had seen the fire, felt the fear, and knew exactly who saved them. Ready to see how the neighborhood rallied? Stick around and hit that notification bell, because the real comeback is just getting started. And just when I thought things might calm down, Karen's next move was classic HOA chaos. She began knocking on doors with petitions, warning folks that my tank was piping in mysterious chemicals and running secret experiments. It was as if she wanted to turn neighbors against me with nothing but fear and rumor. Some bought it, others just humored her, but a few were smart enough to ask questions. That's when I reached out to Captain Ramirez, the fire marshal who'd approved the tank years ago and was always backing our emergency system. When he showed up in uniform, Karen suddenly looked like a kid caught with their hand in the cookie jar. She tried waving her papers like an arrest warrant, but he just shook his head and told her to back off. The fire marshal and I, we were a team now, ready to fight her on every bureaucratic front. If you believe in standing up to nonsense with facts, let me know with a like or comment. And trust me, the story's only heating up from here. Karen thought she could turn the tide with a press conference in her front yard, complete with a megaphone and a dozen muffins, because nothing says, "I'm innocent," like yelling into a cone and handing out stale pastries. She stood there in her HOA blazer, probably thinking she was about to rewrite history. Instead, she just rewrote her role, from HOA queen to neighborhood punchline. But the real twist? The fire chief, Captain Ramirez, showed up shortly after. No pomp, no frills, just the cold, hard truth. He pulled out blueprints, explained the entire emergency water grid, and dropped a bombshell. Karen's gate lock and her repeated attempts to remove the tank had actually slowed down emergency response. The crowd fell silent faster than you can say code red, and Karen's smug smile dissolved like cheap cotton candy. If you're thinking, this Karen just got served, hit that like button and get ready, because she's not done digging her own grave. But don't let Karen's meltdown fool you. This was just the start of her unraveling. City inspectors arrived, clipboard armies ready to take down her illegal gate and all the unauthorized beautification she'd imposed on the neighborhood. Turns out, none of it had proper permits, and all that HOA swagger, just a house of cards. Suddenly, neighbors who used to nod and smile at Karen were avoiding eye contact or pretending not to know her. It's amazing how fast people change when the spotlight's on you. Karen tried to fight back, launching a 1,200-word rant on the community forum filled with vague liability warnings and bizarre metaphors about tanks inviting militarization. Spoiler alert, nobody was buying it. This wasn't just HOA drama anymore, it was public relations disaster. If you've ever watched a bully get taken down by their own nonsense, hit comment and tell me your favorite burn. While Karen was busy posting her online manifesto, the neighborhood was rallying around the tank, the real hero of this story. After all, it wasn't just some shiny metal cylinder. It was the piece of infrastructure that saved dozens of homes from wildfire destruction. Kids stopped by to ask questions, neighbors waved as they passed, and for the first time in years, Timber Ridge felt a little less like a battleground and more like a community. But Karen? She was nowhere to be seen. Her house wrapped in silence, like she was hiding from the mess she made. Rumor had it she'd gone to stay with a cousin in another district, but that didn't matter. The new HOA leadership was rewriting bylaws, outlawing the kind of petty control she thrived on and making sure emergency infrastructure was never again subject to a beauty contest. If you're rooting for justice served cold, don't forget to subscribe so you catch the next part, where the tank goes from villain to legend. Now, just when you thought Karen's reign was over, she tried one last stunt. She re-emerged at the local farmer's market, all smiles and organic honey vibes, trying to spin the story that the tank was under investigation and part of some government overreach. Classic Karen, always playing the victim when the facts are stacked against her. She even suggested I used public funds for personal gain, a laughable accusation no one took seriously. The neighborhood? They had seen the fire, felt the fear, and knew exactly who had their backs. Karen's new smear campaign went nowhere fast. Meanwhile, I found myself getting calls from the mayor's office, offering consulting gigs on emergency preparedness because, apparently, a viral firefighting tank expert is a thing now. If you've ever gone from zero to hero unexpectedly, hit like and share your story. I want to hear it. So here we are. The neighborhood never quite went back to normal, but that turned out to be a good thing. Timber Ridge shed its passive-aggressive lawn award facade and grew something real. Solidarity born not from block parties, but from knowing who stood up when it counted. We held a plaque unveiling ceremony for the tank, with kids waving paper fire hoses and a fire chief giving a heartfelt speech about quiet resilience. I stood there, feeling like the luckiest guy with a glorified water drum in his yard. But the real lesson? It wasn't the fire or the tank that nearly broke us. It was the slow erosion of trust under Karen's rule. If you believe in community and standing up for what's right, don't wait. Comment below what you'd do if your safety was threatened, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. If you're loving this story of small-town justice and smart resilience, smash that subscribe button. Next up, we dive into how this little tank became a symbol of truth, safety, and a neighborhood's comeback. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Just when you think a water tank is about as exciting as watching paint dry, Timber Ridge proved that even the dullest object can become a hero. After the fire fiasco, the tank got a makeover no one saw coming. A group of neighborhood kids grabbed paintbrushes and turned that silver drum into a colorful mural featuring a fire truck, a garden, and bold letters reading, "Timber Ridge Emergency Water." The city even stepped in to fund a plaque commemorating the tank's role in saving the block. Suddenly, what was once Karen's favorite target of contempt became a local celebrity. People started waving as they passed by. Kids asked me about the tank that saved the day, and a nearby school even requested a field trip. Funny how quickly public opinion can flip when you're the one actually keeping the neighborhood safe. If you've ever seen an underdog rise in the most unexpected way, hit like and let me know your story, because this journey ain't over yet. Meanwhile, Karen's silence was deafening. Her house sat quiet, blinds drawn tight like a ghost town mansion. Word spread that she'd disappeared to stay with family out of state while the legal dust settled. But just because she wasn't showing up in person didn't mean she was gone. The new HOA president, Mark, a retired paramedic with a booming laugh and zero patience for nonsense, took a hard line. He kicked off the Emergency Preparedness Committee with a public barbecue and a first aid demo, ditching the usual clipboard parade for some real community spirit. For the first time in years, people actually started looking out for each other, and the tank became a symbol of that new attitude. The neighborhood was changing, and if you're all about watching the little guys win, hit subscribe so you catch the next chapter. Karen's last desperate move was an attempt to smear the tank's reputation online, claiming it was part of some government experiment and spreading rumors about its questionable design. It was laughable, but it showed she still hadn't learned her lesson. No one cared anymore. The community had seen the fire, felt the panic, and knew exactly who had their backs when the heat was on. Karen's nonsense was met with shrugs and eye rolls. The tank wasn't just a drum of water anymore. It was a beacon of truth and resilience. The neighborhood wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. And if you've ever had to shake off a smear campaign, drop a comment telling me how you kept your head up. It's stories like these that keep us going. One afternoon, I got a call from Nolan, a city official from the county infrastructure office. Turns out, my name was popping up in regional emergency planning meetings. They wanted me to consult on backup water systems for other neighborhoods, sparked by the viral tank video. Who knew a backyard emergency water tank could launch a second career? I didn't say yes right away, but I didn't say no either. It was surreal going from guy with a tank to expert in a matter of weeks. This story was bigger than Timber Ridge, and the lesson about preparation, community, and standing firm against bureaucracy was spreading fast. If you believe in turning small victories into big change, hit that like button, because we're just getting started. At home, I kept the original permits, the city correspondence, and every HOA newsletter mentioning the tank close. Not out of paranoia, but principle. Karen might be out of sight, but people like her never really go away. They just wait for the next chance to twist power into control. And when that day comes, I'll be ready. For now, the tank stands strong, etched with a new sign above the valve. Function over fiction. It's simple, unflashy, but it says everything. Sometimes the loudest statement isn't made with noise, but with quiet resilience. If you're inspired to stand up for what matters in your community, don't just comment below with how you've faced your own Karen moment. Let's keep this conversation going. If you're loving this Rise from the Ashes story, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter, where the neighborhood's fight for truth and common sense really take center stage. You won't want to miss how this little tank rewrote more than just Timber Ridge's story. The neighborhood wasn't just healing, it was transforming. Timber Ridge was shedding its passive-aggressive law and award vibe and turning into a community that knew exactly who stood up when it counted. But healing doesn't come easy when scars run deep, and Karen's reign left plenty of those. I kept every scrap of evidence close, the permits, the recordings, even those annoying HOA newsletters. Because Karen wasn't the only one out there who thought controlling people's lives was a hobby, and when the next power-hungry bureaucrat showed up, I wanted to be ready. The suspense here? Would the next Karen try to take the tank down before anyone even knew what was at stake? If you've ever had to stay ready for the next battle, drop a like and tell me how you keep your guard up. Just as the dust seemed to settle, the community's newfound solidarity faced a test. Rumors started swirling. Some whispered that the tank was now too big a target. Others wondered if the neighborhood was safer or just waiting for the next disaster. Then, unexpectedly, a local blogger picked up the story again, framing the tank as a controversial relic. And suddenly, old fears bubbled back to the surface. The emotional tension was thick. Could the tank that saved lives become the very thing to divide the neighborhood? I spent nights worrying if we'd lose what we fought so hard for. That's the thing about truth. It's fragile until everyone chooses to protect it. Feeling the weight of that fight? Hit comment and share how you hold on to hope when the pressure's on. But this wasn't just about fear or rumors. It was about education. I started hosting informal neighborhood meetups. No suits, no slides, just real talk about emergency preparedness, common sense, and the importance of community infrastructure. Kids and grown-ups alike came curious, some skeptical, but most hungry for answers. One afternoon, a woman approached me, her voice trembling as she confessed that she'd always thought the HOA was just about keeping things neat, never realizing how much was at stake until the fire. That moment was electric, a reminder that sometimes the biggest battles are won by changing minds, not just fighting rules. If you believe education can change communities, hit like and let me know who you'd bring to your next neighborhood meeting. Of course, Karen's ghost lingered. She resurfaced briefly on a neighborhood forum, spinning tales of conspiracy and government overreach, trying desperately to sway opinion. But the community had seen the fire, the locked gates, and, most importantly, the truth. Her words fell flat, drowned out by voices demanding transparency and accountability. The HOA leadership shifted, installing policies to prevent a repeat of her tyranny. No more interference with emergency infrastructure, strict rules about transparency, and clear consequences for obstruction. The relief was palpable, but so was the understanding. Vigilance was a daily job, not a one-time victory. If you're committed to watching your back and your communities, smash that subscribe button and stay tuned for the final chapter. In the quiet moments, I often think about how close we came to losing everything. Not to the fire, but to bureaucracy and ego disguised as concern. That tank wasn't just a container of water. It was a symbol of what happens when common sense beats control. It taught us that standing up isn't just about confrontation. It's about preparation, community, and truth. So as I watched the kids racing down the sidewalk past that tank, now painted with a mural of hope, I knew this story was bigger than Timber Ridge. It's a call to every neighborhood, every community, to protect what really matters. If you're ready to be part of that call, don't just watch. Comment, share, and let's spread the word together. The final chapter of this wild ride wasn't about fire trucks, angry HOA meetings, or viral videos. It was about how Timber Ridge learned to rewrite its own story, a story about resilience, truth, and the kind of quiet heroism that changes communities. The manicured lawns, the passive-aggressive newsletter notes, the neighborhood gossip, they didn't vanish overnight, but beneath all that, something deeper shifted. There was now a solidarity born not from block parties or social clubs, but from knowing who stood up when it mattered most. Folks who once nodded politely but avoided eye contact were now waving as they passed by. Kids who used to race down sidewalks on scooters now stopped to ask about the tank, the very thing Karen tried to erase from our lives. The tank wasn't just metal anymore. It was a symbol of everything we'd fought for and everything we still needed to protect. But with every victory comes a question. Would this new sense of community hold strong, or would old habits sneak back in the shadows? If you believe in the power of a neighborhood rising together, hit that like button and stay with me. This story's not done yet. The tank had its day in the spotlight with a plaque unveiling ceremony that felt more like a hometown block party than a formal event. Kids waved paper fire hoses, neighbors brought smiles instead of scowls, and the local news parked their cameras a respectful distance away. Captain Ramirez, the fire chief whose calm presence helped turn the tide during the wildfire, gave a sincere speech about how sometimes the quietest people do the loudest things when the time comes. I didn't make a speech. I just stood by, watching the tarp drop and reveal a steel sign that read, "This tank saved Timber Ridge on August 17th, 2:36 p.m. May it always stand ready. That moment wasn't solemn, but reverent, as if everyone understood that what we were celebrating wasn't just a piece of infrastructure, but a community's fight and survival. Just when I thought the story might be wrapping up, a man in a suit with a city emblem appeared, asking if I'd consider consulting on emergency infrastructure for other neighborhoods. Suddenly, what started as a backyard project was turning into something much bigger. Ever had your life flipped unexpectedly? Hit comment and tell me how you handled your own curveball. Life began to settle into a new rhythm, but I never put my guard down. I kept every piece of paper, the original permits, the official correspondence, and every HOA newsletter that mentioned the tank, right where I could reach it in a heartbeat. Not because I was paranoid, but because history has a nasty habit of repeating itself. Karen may have disappeared from the neighborhood, but the spirit of control, fear, and petty power she embodied wasn't unique. It still lurked, waiting for the next person to turn rules into weapons and control into a throne. The tank, now proudly sporting a new sign etched above the valve, "Function over fiction," stood as a reminder that sometimes the loudest statement is made not by shouting, but by standing firm. If you're ready to stand firm for your community, don't just watch. Subscribe, comment, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. There were moments when I'd just stand on my porch in the evenings, watching the sunlight dance on the tank's gleaming surface, and think about how close we'd come to losing everything, not to fire, but to ignorance, ego, and bureaucracy, dressed in pastel cardigans and HOA pins. The neighborhood learned a hard lesson. Rules exist to protect us, not to control us. If you let the wrong hands twist those rules, you risk losing more than property. You lose safety, trust, and peace of mind. The real victory wasn't just saving homes. It was waking the neighborhood up to what really mattered. If you've ever had to fight to protect your community, smash that like button and tell me your story. Because stories like these keep us going when the pressure's on. And Timber Ridge? It was never the same after that. The tank stood tall, not just as a piece of metal, but as a beacon of resilience, truth, and community spirit. Kids played around it, neighbors stopped to chat, and the HOA finally remembered that safety beats appearances every time. Karen's name faded into whispered jokes and dismissive shrugs, while the new leadership focused on function, safety, and keeping everyone alive. If you want more stories about standing up and rewriting your neighborhood's story, hit that notification bell and subscribe, because this journey is far from over. If you've stuck with me through this wild ride, I want you to know how much I appreciate you. Hit that like button if you believe in the power of truth and community. Drop a comment about your own fight against injustice, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a story about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. This tank saved Timber Ridge, but your voice can save your neighborhood. Let's keep fighting together.